All right. I don't know if you've heard about Portland much out here. In most of the West, everybody's looking to Portland. Oh, that's a hip city. There's even a television show called Portlandia about Portland. Watch it. They said, we try to imagine the most extreme situations we can, and 2 days later we find something that's even more extreme in Portland. So reality, they can't even satirize it because reality is funnier than it really is. So why is Portland so hip? What's made it so attractive? Is it the streetcars? Is it the light rail? No. In a word, it's beer. Beer has made Portland hip. How did that happen? Well, first of all, the first microbrewery in the country opened in Portland in 1979. Then in 1985, the Oregon legislature passed a law legalizing the sale of beer on the same premises in which it was made. Within 4 years, they had a dozen brew pubs in Portland. Today, there's 55 microbrew pubs in the city of Portland, more than any other city in the country. There's at least 20 in the surrounding suburbs. And Oregon has more breweries than any other state in the country. Oregonians drink more microbrew or craft beer than any other state in the country. And every trendy neighborhood you hear about in Portland, Hawthorne, Northwest 23rd, whatever trendy neighborhoods you hear about, Fremont, Alberta, there's going to be a microbrew pub nearby. There's not necessarily going to be any rail. There's no rail near Hawthorne. There's no rail near Northwest 20. Well, there's one rail line that Northwest 23rd, but it was already trendy long before there was a rail line there. It's not the rails, it's the brew pubs. You can go lots of places where there's rails and there's no trendiness. For example, Portland has a chain of stores called Fred Meyer's. You've all got Meijer stores out here, spelled a little differently, but they're the same. They're both hypermarts. My Fred Meyer invented hypermarts. Your Fred Meyer, or Grand Rapids Fred Meyer, came and visited Portland's Fred Meyer and decided to import hypermarts to the Midwest. This Fred Meyer store is in what's called Rockwood, a suburb of Portland. You can see the light rail train right behind. This is the only Fred Meyer store in history that's ever closed for lack of business. So, if you're a hipster and you're living in Portland and you're going to call all your friends from Massachusetts or Indiana or wherever and say you should move to Portland, are you going to say, move to Portland because we got this great streetcar that's so slow that an Oregonian reporter found out he can walk faster than a streetcar? Or are you going to say, move to Portland because we can go to a different brew pub and eat every night and not have to repeat for 2.5 months? We can have a different locally crafted beer every night, and it'll take a year or two before we have to start over again. It's not the streetcars, it's the beer that made Portland hip. Well, if it's beer, then why do cities all over the country want to build streetcars and light rail transit? It's simple. In 1991, Congress created a big pot of money. It's called New Starts. And they said to cities, if you come up with the most expensive, wackiest transit proposals you can, you'll get the most amount of money. If you come up with cheap transit proposals, you probably won't get any money. So the incentive was to come up with expensive transit. And that's what cities have done. Indianapolis has so far resisted the temptation to get free federal money. But if you succumb, you'll be able to tap into this pot of money, but it's going to cost you a lot more in the long run. Well, what should you do instead? I think you can make some transit improvements that don't cost a lot of money. First of all, contract out your transit to private operators. Very little transit in Indianapolis is contracted out. The Colorado legislature passed a law that required Denver's transit agency to contract out half of its bus transit. And the half that it contracts out costs less than half as much per bus mile as the half that it operates itself. Now you ask, well, why doesn't it contract all of it out? Well, it's because of unions. Now, one of the contractors has a union, but the unions who are dealing with the public agencies have a lot more leverage because Congress has a law that says you can't get a grant from the federal government without union approval. So the unions and for the transit agencies end up getting a lot of money. So contracting out is a way to save money if you can overcome the union resistance. I also think you should legalize private transit. Most American cities, it's against the law to run transit in competition with the public transit agency. There's one city that has only private transit buses. That's Atlantic City. They have private transit. It runs 24 hours a day. It's practically the only city in America with 24-hour-a-day transit. It's all private. It gets no subsidies. Fares are $1.75. If there's a fare at all, some of the buses don't even have fares because they're subsidized by the hotels. A lot of Sun Belt cities do not prohibit private transit. San Ysidro, California has 11 different companies providing private transit service. Atlanta, Georgia has this private transit company, several private transit companies, 5 or 6 of them, in direct competition with the public transit agency. Miami has at least a dozen private transit companies in competition with the public transit agency. So you can find private transit. All you have to do is legalize it, and it's going to happen. It's going to be there. Then, if you go to the San Francisco Bay Area, they have a regional rail district called BART. But they don't have a regional bus district. Every bus district is limited to the counties. So if you want cross-county bus service, you can't go to a regional bus district. And the trains are so expensive that they don't serve very many places. So employers like Google and Apple and Facebook are buying their own fleets of buses. Google just bought a whole bunch of double-decker buses because the single-decker buses they were operating didn't have enough capacity. And they're carrying people from San Francisco County through San Mateo County to Santa Clara County because that's where their people are going. Now there is a rail alternative, but the rail lines don't stop near their offices, so they provide buses. Portland has a regional transit district, both buses and rail, a regional transit district. But the state legislature allowed cities to opt out. And several cities have discovered that they can provide better transit for less money if they leave the regional transit district. So there's at least 4 different city-owned transit systems, most of which run buses from that city. This is Wilsonville, this is Sandy, this is Canby. They all run buses in their cities, plus buses to Portland, in competition with TriMet, the regional transit district, and they save their taxpayers money because it costs less to provide better service than TriMet was charging them. Now beyond transit, if you have a congestion problem, the most cost-effective thing you can do is traffic signal coordination. Now, Indianapolis is proud to have coordinated about 200 traffic signals in downtown, but they haven't coordinated all the signals in the area. And it's the most cost-effective. It only costs about $25,000 or so an intersection, and it does far more to relieve congestion and reduce air pollution than building 100 miles of rail transit. The only city in America that has coordinated all of its traffic signals is Los Angeles. They just got done about a month ago. Another thing that you can do that you might not like at first is start tolling roads. If you pay for roads with tolls instead of gas taxes, you can vary the amount of toll by the amount of congestion there is on that road. This is, the center lanes here are tolled. They were actually built by a private company that was making a profit. The side lanes are free, and although there's a lot more cars in the side lanes, they're not moving very fast, and the center 2 lanes are moving more people, more cars per hour than the 4 side lanes. And it costs $9 at the most expensive, the peak of the traffic day, to use the toll lanes. And people say, oh, then only rich people are going to use it. No, that's not true, because poor people have to get to work on time too. Poor people have to pick up their children at daycare. In California, if you're 1 minute late picking up your children, you pay $5 per child per minute. So if you've got 2 children, it's cheaper to use the toll lanes than it is to be 1 minute late. Actually, I've got a paper out that you can download from Cato's website. It's called Ending Congestion by Refinancing Highways, arguing that we'd be better off tolling all roads, especially all congested roads, instead of just some lanes of roads, and we do more to relieve congestion. Some congestion is going to go away even without any of these things. The new Ford Fusion is the lowest priced car today that you can buy with adaptive cruise control. What adaptive cruise control does is it mimics the speed of the car in front of you. If the car speeds up, your car goes faster. It slows down, it goes slower. You set a top speed that you don't want to go any faster than, but other than that, it just exactly mimics it. And what happens when that mimicking takes place is it relieves the congestion that happens due to slow human reflexes. About half of all congestion is not because roads exceed or traffic exceeds the capacity of the roads, but because of slow human reflexes. When as few as 20% of cars on the road are using adaptive cruise control, that congestion is going to go away. So, just with new technology, we're going to end a lot of congestion. Now, there's another new technology that's a little bit more distant on the horizon. You've probably heard of it. It's self-driving cars. Google has tested a self-driving car around California. They've driven 300,000 miles. The only accident they ever had is when they were stopped at a stoplight and somebody rear-ended them. The self-driving cars can see pedestrians, they see other cars. I've been in one of the self-driving cars driving around Washington, D.C. It was a totally relaxing experience. You didn't feel any tension at all because there wasn't anybody with their hands on the wheel. And in fact, it was probably a lot safer than if somebody actually had their hands on the wheel. Self-driving cars are on the horizon. The technology is there. They've been legalized in at least 3 or 4 states. According to Google, they're legal in all states, but the law says you have to have a licensed driver behind the wheel. It doesn't say the driver has to have their hands on the wheel. When I say they've been legalized, it means once the self-driving capabilities are proven, you don't even have to have a licensed driver behind the wheel. The benefits of self-driving cars will be huge. First of all, we'll be able to triple or more road capacities. We won't need to build a lot more roads as our population grows because we're going to have a surplus of capacities because when we replace human reflexes with computer reflexes, we'll have a lot more capacity. Universal mobility. You can be 9 years old or 90 years old. You don't have to have a license to drive a self-driving car. Because of the end of congestion, there'll be faster speeds, and faster speeds means more economic benefits, a lot more safety, and it'll be greener because we won't have to spend a lot of money on safety equipment that we're now including in cars, making them heavier and more expensive. Here's a Volkswagen that has what they call valet parking capability. You drive to work or you drive to a hotel or restaurant and get out of your car and say, "Car, go park yourself." And it's got a database of all the available parking places, and it just drives around until it finds an available legal place, and then it'll park itself. Then when you're done with work or you're done eating dinner or whatever, you pull out your smartphone and you say, "Car, come." And it doesn't matter where it is. It'll come and start itself up and come and pick you up. Now, if you don't want it to park, you can say, "Car, go to the lube place and get your oil changed." Or you can say, "Car, go out and be a taxi for a while. Go pick up some people and collect some money, earn some money for me instead of paying for parking." Sebastian Thrun, who has led the Google effort to develop self-driving cars, says he estimates that car ownership will dramatically decline because a lot of people will just be using other people's vehicles that are shared. I'm not sure that's true. I think people have a lot of interest in having their own personal space. It has their personal music and their personal messes in the back seat. But there could be some of that going on.